fellow travelers. Welcome back to episode 2 of Doctor Fanboi, short takes, long boxes. We, once again, have been listening to the opening theme song to Marvel's Runaways on Hulu, composed by Siddhartha Klosa. This is no accident, as we will resume our coverage of the first volume of Runaways, published in 2003, written by Brian K. Vaughan and drawn by Adrian Alfano. Today's episode will focus on issue 2, an issue that I promised last time would build on the debut issue's efficient introduction of characters through parallel panel layout, while deepening the bond that they experience being united only by the shared enemy of their parents, all the while addressing that first issue's major omission: powers for our protagonists. If this were the 1970s, we would get all of their powers at the same time, and they probably would have the showdown with their parents in the very first issue. Instead, Vaughan and Alfano take 6 issues, that's 6 months in distribution time, to tell this first arc of a story that obeys Aristotle's unity of time and takes place on a single night. Part of this is craft. One reason that Vaughan and Alfano take their time is it allows them to use the technique that they employed to such great success in the first issue, using parallel structure to introduce our heroes one at a time, to devote an issue following the template that's going to be established here to explore the origin story as a metaphor for self-fashioning and teenage rebellion, one hero at a time. 6 issues for 6 heroes. Enough for all of our heroes: Nico, Alex, Carolina, Gertrude, Chase, and Molly to grace the cover. However, there's another reason that they do this, and this has everything to do with changing comic book standards. In the 70s, there were far more panels per page than there are now. That was just the industry standard. Additionally, there were more dialogue bubbles per panel and more words per dialogue bubble. All of this leads to, in fancy comic book terms, a comic book world that is far more decompressed now than it was in the 70s. This notion of compression and decompression has to do with pacing. A major explanation for the trend towards decompression in comic books has to do with the influence of non-hero books, like Sandman and The Invisibles. This is one of the first straight superhero books to employ a decompressed strategy. It certainly won't be the last. Given that the first comic doesn't really establish them as a team or allow them to talk to each other, we would expect this issue to start with them doing exactly that. Instead, we start with the parents. In this fantastic first full-page panel, we see our 4 witnesses to the violent crime that was done before reflected upon their parents.
It's not really a reflection. It's through a mirror. Same basic principle.
This panel construction and its implication of division reminds us of all of the false binaries that are going to be part of the game of Runaways. The divisions between parents and children, adolescence and adulthood, heroes and villains. It also gets us to think about this notion of reflection as heredity. We are reflections of our parents are reflections of us, etc. The parents move quickly as they try to figure out what was making noise inside the catacombs. They open the door to their child's bedroom to reveal this, the second team photo of our main characters. They're playing Twister. There's a metaphor here. Additionally, it demonstrates their problem solving, as this is the perfect cover for what they've been doing, because it placates their parents by suggesting that they are still children playing a game. Our parents placated, we are left with several pages where we get to see our characters talking to each other. They haven't really done this much. In most Marvel books, especially the X books, once they had come together to realize that they were fighting their parents, the book would begin to pair them off and have them fight one obstacle at a time. This is an easy way to establish character. It's a way that Shakespeare uses in Hamlet. Hamlet has lots of group scenes where Hamlet's thinking things, but we don't really get to know Hamlet until he has scenes alone with Polonius, with Ophelia, with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, with us in the form of his soliloquies. However, Vaughan and Alfano ignore in the following issues that we're starting to talk about today the advice of Shakespeare and Chris Claremont, who wrote the X-Men books, and instead have the team formed all at the same time. This, I think, really foregrounds the fact that more than anything, this is a comic about these people's shared experience. It also is a chance for Vaughan to show off some of his best sentence-to-sentence, panel-to-panel writing. Molly is a problem. There's a fantastic moment at the bottom of a panel that uses the technology of the page flip to make us think that maybe Molly does already know. However, when we turn the page and she reveals that she thinks they're talking about SEX and she should know because she's not a baby, Vaughan chooses the perfect thing for her to declare because it reveals her immaturity by making us aware of how she thinks she's older than she is. Beyond providing a really nice bit of character work in terms of Molly jumping to the conclusions that everybody's talking about sex when she's not in the room, her bringing up sex brings up our own misconceptions of all of the discussion of her body and the changes that she's going through, where we assume that she's talking about her period like all of the characters do, when in fact she's probably talking about the change that happens to teenagers' bodies in Marvel. She might be a mutant. After their emergency Twister meeting is interrupted by the parents and the night is over, it looks like we might be entering this paired off sort of strategy when we see Nico and Alex taking a trunk that probably contains a dead body out to the car. It's worth remembering that this was our couple that we were supposed to think, unless we remember that Carolina was involved, might be a romantic couple. It's obviously interesting that they're having their first moment together after they saw each other, and we were prepared for them to see each other over possibly a dead body of a teenage person. But instead of going down that path towards pairing off, Nico and Alex instead talk about everybody running away and meeting. I said earlier that this is incredibly decompressed storytelling. It is, however, it's more compressed than the version of the Runaways origin story that is on Hulu's Runaways. In that story, it takes them an entire first season to run away. Here, they run away in the second issue. Vaughn and Alfana consistently think about plot and moving plot forward. My point is two things. One, Vaughn and Alfana didn't think that they were going to be writing Runaways beyond the 18 issues of this arc. Secondly, the pattern, the trend towards decompression has continued even further in the 15 years separating us from this comic. And then our characters run away. They meet beneath the statue of James Dean, which is fantastic. It not only serves to remind us that we're in Hollywood, it also reminds us of other teenage rebels. But this isn't the only reference that's made here, as their discussion about what to do turns to a phone call to the police. This scene reminds me, at least, and I assume Brian K. Vaughan, since he's roughly the same age as I am, of a certain character Chunk calling the police to talk about something crazy that no one believes. In Goonies, of course, our heroes are poor misfits, children of residents of the Goondocks. They are fighting against the really wealthy parents of the socialites. They are dealing with their own parents who are incredibly proud of them but don't know how to really provide for them, but want to provide for them. And finally, they're dealing with the criminally devious Fratelli family. All three of those functions are combined by the Pride. They are the wealthy establishment. They are the wily criminal underground. And most importantly, for our purposes, they are people that want better for their kids. Earlier, I brought up Hamlet for seemingly no reason. However, here we have more Hamlet. By not being taken seriously by the law, our characters are put in a position where whatever justice they are seeking has to happen outside of justice, however it exists in Chinatown or LA or Denmark. Hamlet, of course, is a revenge tragedy, and one of the staples of a revenge tragedy is that you cannot seek normal recompense for whatever has befallen you, and by undertaking your own path, you ensure everybody's damnation. They decide to return to Molly's house where the trunk is.
The trunk is in Gert's house. They return to Gert's house
To see whether or not there is in fact a dead body in it. They ride in Chase's white van, and he talks about how it's the perfect vehicle to drop off the grid. Gert wonders if perhaps this apple didn't fall far enough away from the tree. This, for me, again, is fantastic writing. It not only gets us to think about genetic inheritance regarding supervillainy and how it does or doesn't run in the family, it's a great bit of characterization for Chase in that it helps to differentiate him from the stock jock archetype. Again, decompression. Not a lot happens in this issue. They get to Gert's house, they discover a keypad, they use burgeoning forensic science to realize which numbers have been pressed most often and that it happens to spell pride, and they open a door. However, it does set up the pattern that they will be returning to houses, their childhood homes, the things that have been comforting for them, to reveal secrets about their past, and set up the big reveal of her special thing, which, as I said earlier, is a goddamn dinosaur. It is a time-honored Marvel tradition to have a full-page panel at the end of an issue that reveals the thing that our heroes have to fight next. And thus ends the second issue, and we see the template that Vaughn and Alfana are going to modify for the next 3 issues. One in which we see plot forwarded by a tiny step that has inevitable consequences of bringing forward the conflict between parent and child, and one of those children gets to go home, and by going home has an origin story and realizes their powers that are very much about, hey, mom and dad. When I see you next, predictably, we're going to talk about 3 of those issues. We're going to try to pick up the pace and cover issue 3, 4, and 5 in the same episode. Thanks for watching Dr. Fanboi. I'm Matt Vadney. Stay safe. Be cool. Hey, you made it to the end and you're still watching. That means maybe you'd be willing to like or share this video, as well as ask a question about Runaways or about something you'd like to see me cover in future episodes. I will answer as quickly as I can. You should also check out me at Dr. Fanboi on Twitter, as well as look for me in a bunch of online venues about comics and pop culture and music. You also can check out my Facebook page and my Patreon. I said it before, but I mean it. Stay safe. Be cool. The last 10 minutes were brought to you by Productions.